Was it an Intel presentation? I remember a VLSI Intel presentations, and here we got such an inspiring presentation about cars and the next generation of cars. And thank you, Rick, for this inspiring presentation, and not just because you promised us to solve the traffic problems of the city of Tel Aviv, but also for all the rest of the information. So thank you very much, and we are just about our third speaker, and I would like to invite to the stage Mr. Bob Kalka, Vice President of IBM Security. Please.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me back. So, in my 23 years of my 28 years that I've been at IBM, that I've been helping to build the security business into now more than 8,000 cybersecurity professionals within IBM, one of the things that I've always enjoyed is when you see research that comes out in this area, it's looking at the story behind the story. Right, for example, I'm going to be talking about the brand new Ponemon 2017 Cost of Breach Index. And usually the tagline from these studies goes something like, oh, did you know that the average cost of a breach is now $3.62 million, which is true, which is actually 10% lower than last year when we did the study, and that's true as well. And that's all interesting, but to those of us that are in the security bubble that live this, you go, what do you want me to do with that data? What I'm going to show you is how this study exposes some of the dirty little secrets that exist in cyber today. And the reason this is so important for us to do is that when we take what are essentially things that exist that we choose not to look at and actually bring them into the open, we actually have a chance of doing something about them. And so what you're going to see in this study ties into some of the most emergent issues that we see happening in cyber right now. Now, a good way to actually get into this discussion is to look at how the typical shop, the typical IT shop, actually does their security operations program today, right? Because we all have this. So if you look at security operations and response, by the way, personally, I just hit 9 million air miles with American Airlines. And I didn't fly, if you do the math, I've been off the ground for 2 years of my life. And my wife would tell you that explains a lot. But in that time, that's doing nothing but meeting with folks like you around the globe, literally for over 2 decades. And what we see across our 17,000 customers is that we see a lot of the same stuff repeating. We know what the right thing to do is, but our ability to actually execute and get to where we know we need to get to is often a huge challenge today. So let's look at, if I give you the generic view of how most of our clients will do security operations and response when we start working with them, it's basically 4 phases to security operations and response. And what everybody starts with is some kind of security analytics technology. And everybody starts, of course, with collecting, normalizing, correlating, reporting, and monitoring logs, right? The old SIM stuff. And today, 99.9% of clients have SIM today. I'd assert to you just from an observation point of view, roughly 80% of them are not real happy with how they're doing it, but at least they have it, so the checkbox is there for the auditor, right? But what we've realized is that most, at least 50% of organizations now have moved beyond just looking at logs, which is old stuff, and actually realizing that looking at real-time data is important to catch use cases, such as, let's say you have contractors and you know that they download on average 3 confidential documents a week, and right now you have a contractor downloading 300 confidential documents. If you're just doing logs, you're probably not going to find that, or if you do, it's later and they've already left the company with all your stuff. So what we see everybody do is flows. The combination of real-time flow analysis plus logs, SIM stuff, has become the best practice. But now, of course, we have a lot of attention being made into user behavior analytics, because isn't it more interesting to know, instead of that there's 35 things that your analytics tool tells you, isn't it more interesting to know that it's one person who's generated the traffic that's indicated those 35 different things. And then finally, there's a lot of advanced stuff like incident forensics and stuff you can get into here. So that's what people do just to identify what should I pay attention to figure out if I really have a problem or not. And most people are actually still stuck down here at the logs, but there's a lot of room to grow about that. Once you find suspicious stuff, you then get into the trendy term of trendy terms, right? Threat hunting. And we go, how do you figure out if you're really having a problem or not? We did a study of some of our clients last year, and we found that the most common practice to take a suspicious indicator and find out if you're actually having a problem or not is this incredibly complex technology called a manual Google search. And that what you'd actually do is, we surveyed level 1 security analysts. Said, what do you do? And they said, well, we find 5 to 13 sources that we trust. And we kind of go, hey, did you see this configuration change of a mobile device that led to some network traffic over here? Have you seen that? And do you have a document? And can you confirm for me whether it's really a problem or just something that's benign? And so we have some clients even going beyond that to get into investigative analysis by pulling feeds such as social media feeds, intelligent video analytics, as well as phone call logs and stuff like that. Kind of creepy stuff for some, right? But it's things that you pull in. But in either case, the core problem here is that our researchers have discovered that only 20% of the available threat intelligence today is indexed and searchable by any search engine. 80% of it is on the deep web. And if you have your level 1 security analyst running around doing this, that means the most common practice today is manually searching through 20% of the data. You notice it's very interesting that all 3 of us in this block of time are going to mention AI. Well, I can tell you, we just spent 12 months with 42 clients beta testing our Watson, our application of our Watson AI engine against cybersecurity, and it's now out in the open market. And what we found is that our clients told us that you need to stop calling AI artificial intelligence, because there's an implication in our industry today that if you do AI, it means that people's jobs will go away. You know what we found by working with 42 clients? They're telling us to call it augmented intelligence. It actually allows their people to do their jobs is what it does. It doesn't get rid of any jobs. It actually allows them to be effective, right? So hopefully you can do something about that stuff. Then once you figure out through threat hunting, you get into threat intelligence because you say, what's going on in the rest of the world? And what we find most people are doing today is buy multiple feeds of threat intelligence. We did another study last year and said, what do you actually do with those feeds? And the most common answer was, we look at them. I said, that's not the question. I said, what do you do with them? And they said, we look at them. Right? Getting actionable intelligence out of the threat intelligence tools is one of those dirty little secrets in our industry not a lot of people talk about, but it's very real. By the way, we haven't found a programmatic way to do that either. That's through smart people. And then finally, we get to incident response, which is once you have a problem, you all, of course, by the way, this is the most naive belief I've had in probably 20 years of cybersecurity. 2 years ago, I had a belief that at least 95% of organizations had a well-defined, up-to-date incident response plan that listed what incidents are you worried about and what's the detailed run book you're going to execute when any of those incidents occurs. I honestly thought it was like 95%. We've discovered it's less than 2%. So of all the stuff that you see on here, I'm going to write null set, because if you don't have an up-to-date, detailed incident response plan, not the 2 to 3 page guidelines, I mean, what is the run book of who's going to do what? It means technically you're making it up as you're going. So to go from that to actually automate incident response and then pulling in cognitive stuff, remember augmented intelligence, it's clearly become a big issue. Of everything that you see up on here, the thing that's been the biggest surprise to us is in fact the incident response piece. Because one of the, threat hunting's really trendy today. Guess what the next trendy term is? Orchestration. All that is an extension of incident response, right? So that one's been very interesting to us. And guess what the new 2017 cost of data breach survey says is the #1 factor that lowers your cost per record in a data breach? Incident response. And once again, that's just a preamble to everything that's coming with orchestration, which is one of the next big areas that's coming in our industry. Encryption, employee training, business continuity management, bring it into the disaster recovery stuff, threat sharing, security analytics, that stuff you'd say, but incident response has become from dirty little secret to sort of like obvious little secret that you just got to do. I know that's a weird term, but you get the point. Now, this is the stuff that this brand new study found actually lowers the cost per record of a breach. Guess what increases the cost of a record in a breach? Third parties, cloud, and mobile. Guess what? We're not going to change any of those, are we? That's one of the fascinating things, right? In the world of security, right? None of the things that actually ends up increasing, and this is real data, this isn't like philosophical. Cloud, mobile, and working with third parties, partnering, increases your cost per record of a data breach. Guess what? We're not going to change that. There was another study that just came out that said the Prime Minister mentioned digitalization of everything. 83% of organizations that we surveyed said that digitalization is a major priority for them. 83%. 15% of them said they feel like they have a mature view of how they're going to accomplish that. There's this massive gap in there that calls out all the need for identity and data security and application security and all the other stuff, that is the reason we've acquired 28 cybersecurity companies in the last 17 years, actually, to build this business with over 8,000 security professionals today. All right, and so, but here's the kind of next thing. Because one of the things that this study looked at is also by industry, because of course there's differences by industry of data breaches. And here's another thing that you and I aren't going to change. The fact is, this shows you the cost per record in a breach based on the client's industry. Now, healthcare, by the way, keeps exploding, right? Big surprise. Financial services, so on and so forth. I don't know what's going on in the government, but they're all the way at the bottom. Still a cost, but it actually went down to percent. What's the story behind this story? It actually came up a little bit this morning. The next thing that's happening, that there's no doubt it's happening, is IoT. And the fascinating thing that all these IoT devices are going to do to us as security professionals, it's going to tax us in two major ways. Number one is obviously technology. Do you even have the technology to do this kind of stuff, right? To protect, again, the data and the transmission and all that other stuff. But the other side that IoT is going to challenge us as cybersecurity professionals is in our management. How do we manage this within the context of the larger organization? 24 years ago, whatever, when I got my MBA from Syracuse University in New York, I actually started with a marketing MBA, and when I started working on cybersecurity, I immediately changed this very unique program called Small Group Psychology. So I have an MBA in small group psychology. So don't worry, I'm not watching you. Actually, I am, but don't worry, I'm not. And the reason I got that degree, under the tutelage of one of the world's leading experts on group psychology, Dr. Gary Gemmel, who happens to be with us today in the audience, is that what you learn very quickly is the basis for group psychology. You learn that security is a shrink's paradise. The reason it is that in individual psychology, right, when you see a reality that doesn't match the reality you want, you usually have a dysfunctional response. What is cybersecurity? We represent the reality of what's happening in the IT systems. Not what do you hope's happening in the IT systems, or wish was happening in the IT systems, or think is happening in IT systems. Do you wonder why people don't want to hang out with us a lot often? It's because we represent reality, and the organizations around you don't necessarily want to see that reality. And what IoT is going to do to you is it's bringing the OT environment, and if you don't have an OT environment, you will now. And IT, OT integration, IoT devices, what it will force you to do is allow yourself to improve your management style as well to deal with some of the organizational psychology issues that come out of this stuff. I remember the Major General mentioned psychology this morning. This is ground zero for psychology in cyber. The organizations need to work with us and collaborate, but there's a built-in problem there, and you'll see a lot of research coming on that stuff. So finally, let me close. So what you get into is, first of all, we've acquired 28 cybersecurity companies over the last 17, 18 years. We're now a $2 billion business in IBM. We and Cisco are the two largest enterprise security vendors in the world now. And so we have stuff that addresses all this stuff, right? So that's enough, that's nice. But what I want to close with is the fact that we have a massive investment, and we'll continue to have a massive investment in Israel. We have over 500 cybersecurity professionals in 5 labs here in Israel. We've made some of our most prominent acquisitions of Israeli companies, as you see on here. We've got our research lab in Haifa. We've got a cybersecurity center of excellence down in Beersheba, where we're doing stuff, everything from connected car research to a bunch of other stuff. They're located 500 meters from the Israeli National CERT, which is using our QRadar intelligence stuff to monitor that stuff, etc. And final point, I've been in this space too long not to realize that everybody has an assumption that when a big company buys a bunch of cybersecurity talent, then if you look 3 years down the road, what you're going to get is a truck full of mediocre stuff. And there's a lot of use cases that prove that in our industry. Out of our 28 acquisitions, Gartner has 18 magic quadrants that deal with the 28 acquisitions we've done, and we are in leadership on 16 of those 18 magic quadrants, including stuff like Guardium that we acquired 8 years ago that continues to be industry-leading stuff. So we feel like we've kind of broken the mold because we're doing crazy innovative stuff with cloud as well as cognitive with Watson, et cetera, and so we keep a lot of our talent. So it's very exciting. So my message to you, I just want you to see there's a lot of dirty little secrets out there, and it's our ability to unearth those and effectively deal with them, as you see from that study, is going to help us not only secure our businesses better, but it's actually going to lower the costs when there are breaches that occur. Thank you so much for your time.